What's happening, all you hip cool cats? My name is Kit, and welcome to Chicago Reacts. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that ring bell notification. That way you're made aware when we upload new content onto our YouTube channel. And today, guess what? It's still Christmas Eve at the time of this recording. It's still freezing cold outside, well, in Chicago after all. And we're still continuing on with Warhammer 40k content. And in the last two videos I reacted to, one by Major Kill titled Why Reboot Guilliman is an Absolute Beast, Warhammer 40k lore, and another one in regards to Guilliman, What If Guilliman Had Found and Ground First 40k Theories by 40k Theories YouTube channel. We're still in the realm of Ultramar, Ultramarines, Reboot Guilliman, because we're going to talk about the battle for Macragge. So, man the defenses, grab your recaf, be sure that your bolter is armed and ready, have your las gun at the ready. The video we were reacting to is titled Imperium, Tyranids First Contact and the Battle of Macragge, Warhammer 40k 1000 lore, Luetin09 by Luetin09. So as always, please be a hip cool cat and support the original content creators. Please support the original content creators because a lot of work and effort are made into these YouTube videos, and hey, Warhammer 40k has a very special spot in my heart, so please support the original content creators, especially the 40k content creators, because they're doing a lot of good for the community, and this is great content to react to. So grab a tasty snack, a tasty beverage, and since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's get ready to defend the realm of Macragge. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Tyranids are creatures from our nightmares. Yes! Yes! That was a magnifique. And I could say that because that's a nice spicy meatball, and I could say that too because I'm Italian.
The Imperium of Man first made contact with a new Xenos species at the planet of Tyran. Imperial explorators, who are Mechanicus tech priests committed to exploration and exploitation of new planets and regions in the galaxy in the name of the Imperium, discovered a strange phenomena where planets previously recorded as lush and verdant were now barren husks. Not even a single cell of life remained. While this disturbing fact was immediately reported, the slow-turning cogs of the Imperium's bureaucracy was, as with most things, likely
a very interesting photo or image. If anyone in the Warhammer 40k, I'm talking to you, if anyone in the Warhammer 40k community knows where this the exact image is from, please let me know, because already right off the bat we see probably a noble woman right here, you know, wanting to speak to a council or to a general, and here we have, well, I guess somebody pretending to be a gentleman on his knees, and then another one in the back acting like a complete rapscallion, arrogant, drunkard lord. So if anyone knows where this original image is from, please type it in the comment section below.
To raise not much more of an interest than the lift of an eyebrow. Stranger and more deadly things are likely occurring at almost any time than a planet simply just becoming a dead rock. Still, as the explorators would continue to report these strange dead worlds, a fleet of Xenos previously unrecorded would be drawing ever closer. A survey craft returning from studying these destroyed worlds encountered a strange cloud of unidentified objects entering the edge of the system. After taking some damage from strange organic mines in the edge of this cloud, the Imperial ship would manage to survive back to an Imperial base orbiting Tyran Primus with the disturbing reports. Days later, the Xenos fleet would now descend from the skies down to the surface.
And at least, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm well aware that the Tyranids were brought or were made aware of our galaxy with the events of what was happening with the Horus Heresy. I believe that there was, again, the name of the world is skipping my mind, but there was a beacon or a tower that was activated that, at least for all intents purposes, sent out such a wave of psychic energy that it captured the hive mind's attention, and that's why they are swarming towards our galaxy. So, to the lore experts, especially those in the Warhammer 40k community, please, I guess, type or tell me what exactly that battle and planet was, or the beacon was as well, that captured the Tyranids' attention. I know that currently I just got done playing Dawn of War 2. I'll never play Dawn of War 3. In fact, you know what? General rule here on this channel, we don't talk about Dawn of War 3. Terminators doing backflips and jumping and flying. I mean, get out of here.
Of Tyran Primus.
Get out of here.
The main base on Tyran was a heavily fortified bunker system designed to withstand the ferocious storms of the ocean world.
Glorious.
Coupled with the fact that its location on the edge of Imperial territory made it a likely target for Xenos attacks. So 4 immense planetary defense lasers were situated on the outpost, along with void shield generators, which are a form of gravitic energy field. It is typically utilized to defend super heavy vehicles and infrastructure. Often you see these used by starships and titans in the Imperium. Void shields displace ranged attacks by distorting space-time around the point of impact. The outpost was then further supported by an array of other weapon systems, including autocannon and las cannon, as well as various heavy bastions and bunkers. The defense complement itself was also formidable, with 3 full navy wings and a force of Skitarii, as well as finally an entire infantry regiment of Imperial Guard. A standard deployment for any frontier planet that had been deemed the standardized force strong enough to repel most enemy assaults.
Glorious.
The alien horrors began to fall from the skies in an array of colours and strange storm-racked skies. The Imperial ground gunners attempted to engage and prevent any of the invaders from making planetfall. But just as suddenly as they'd begun, this attack from the strange unseen species would withdraw. Is this all they have? What an easy victory, mused the Imperial defenders. This ignorant overconfidence would soon be tragically misplaced.
Can you imagine being on the ground when that's taking place? You know, because when I reacted to one of Luetin's videos about Henry Cavill being an executive producer and potentially making live Warhammer 40k content on Amazon, you know, one of the reasons why I'm so attached to Warhammer 40k is because it's so different than what you see in, well, in my mind, irrelevant IPs. And look, this is just my opinion. I'm not impressed with the current new Star Trek. Picard and Discovery were husks of Gene Roddenberry's vision of a post-scarcity, human federation, right? Of course, there's aliens part of it too. And then there's Star Wars, which Disney totally just screwed over. It's just 40K is just set in a timeline where humanity is living in the aftermath, the shadow remains of what was once a Federation empire before the Emperor. Because at least for all intents and purposes, in a dark age of technology, we crossed the finish line. Humanity had technology and abundance of resources. We had, AI at our beck and call. We literally had the dream, and then that dream turned into a nightmare. And I always kind of imagine, like, what's it like in 40K to be a person living there. And of course, the universe of Warhammer 40K is completely unforgiving. It's an absolute pure nightmare. But can you imagine being one of the soldiers and you are part of that first contact, that first battle with the Tyranids? And, I think we all know what the Tyranids represent and the absolute terror that they are. It's kind of like overwhelming, and that's what really draws me in. It's sort of like the unchecked terror, the absolute madness, the insanity, and it's a way in which you could create your own kind of character, or and I know that there's a lot of people who are part of our Discord who are really good at painting models and creating their own armies, and it's just you're creating a story with the forces that you're creating, and what are these people like, what are their personalities. I don't know if anyone kind of goes into that, because like, for example, when I was playing Dark Crusade way back when I actually had time to play video games, you know in my mind, obviously, you're playing a game, you're trying to conquer a map. We've all played Dark Crusade. Shout out to my Warhammer 40K fans that have played Dark Crusade. But I always kind of imagine like the forces there. Like I played as the Imperial Guard, who they are, what's it like. I kind of had my own stories in my head about the various guardsmen and tank commanders and Ogren and Karsakin and tech priests that made up my forces, and what they're probably thinking taking on the Necrons, the Tau, the Eldar, the Orcs, the Chaos Space Marines, the Blood Ravens. That's what I like about it. And so this Tyranid invasion, it's the big one. It's the first one, but because humanity and the rest of the Warhammer 40K universe finds out that there's a threat from outside the galaxy coming in now, a new force.
Majus Varnak ordered a fleet of Imperial Navy cruisers to continue to harass the withdrawing Xenos as to make sure of their retreat and assumed broken morale. But upon following this command, the Imperial ships would quickly discover, as they pushed through the spore mine clouds that masked the Xenos fleet, that not even 100 of the strange bioships, but in fact thousands. Having suffered minimal, if any, losses from the initial planetary engagement, swarms of Xenos ships would seize upon these easily stunned prey as they rounded on the Imperial ships. The first to be physically shredded was the Emperor's Fist, ripped apart by small invasive organisms spewed forth from a larger alien vessel. As the others were similarly cut to pieces or ripped apart by tendrils, the now absolutely panic-wrought crew in the last surviving ship were able to dispatch a warning to Tyran. While in the process of doing so, gene stealers had been unleashed into the ship's interior, efficiently and brutally slaughtering the entire crew complement in minutes.
Shout out to the people who remember when I played Deathwing, Deathwing, of course, on our Twitch channel, Chicago Plays, in which, let's face it, the Dark Angels regulated on the Tyranid hive mind, or the gene stealers to be more precise.
While in the background other ships were already being absorbed into the fleet's bioreserves. The Xenos would now return to the orbit of Tyran, and there would be no respite this time, no withdrawal. Many thousands of their mycetic spores rained down to the planet's surface, with the Imperial outpost defences having little success in preventing them from doing so. As the ocean around the outpost began to foam and boil, the Imperial defenders looked on baffled and more than a little concerned. What kind of horror was this attack? Soon enough their answers returned, as aliens the likes of which had never been seen before sprang from the watery gestation. Imperial Guard would quickly turn to their instinctive training and even were successful in repelling the first waves of attack by these savage alien creatures.
No.
The fact that among their number were Guard veterans from the Imperial Death World of Katashan, a nightmarish jungle planet. The lower bioforms of the attacking Xenos were
I'm glad he brought up Catachan, because the thing is, the world of Catachan is an absolute nightmare. The plants, the fungi, the fish, the amphibians, the reptiles, all of them are on steroids and hitting the gym. And they're not regulating their intake. Okay, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, I shouldn't say things out loud. Okay. But it's been discussed amongst the Warhammer 40K community that the Tyranids sent a scout ship or something like that into our galaxy millions upon millions of years ago before they ever invaded, and that the world of Catachan is actually, some of the species there are now feral species of what was once the Tyranid hive mind.
Little match for most standard Imperial weaponry, and the Gaunts and Genestealers would be significantly decimated. Things, though, began to quickly unravel as one of their planetary defense lasers would fall silent. It was literally choked and clogged by a mass of Xenos gargoyles that had been instructed from the hive mind to force themselves down into its barrel and inner workings. Now the larger bioforms like Carnifexes would begin to appear, ripping.
Can you imagine that? Like you're a guardsman, you're learning like, hey, how come the guns are quiet? What's going on up there? And you look up there and you see all these organisms there they just dogpiled on it. You'd have to be afraid then. The seas are boiling. The whole sky is turning a different color. You got all these different aliens and monsters that are just coming at you with claws and fangs, spewing out acid, or microscopic creatures that will eat your flesh off. Pure nightmare. Nightmare fuel. Nightmare, 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 nightmare.
Through defenses and destroying further weapon installations. The Xenos were turning the tables, and it was now only a matter of time before the guardsmen would be horribly dismembered and then consumed. The outpost soon is overrun by the alien horrors, and its heavy bastions and bunkers smashed to pieces or enveloped by this highly aggressive Xenos. Only Tyran's command bunker remained, and it was already beginning to buckle and crack under the weight of unrelenting damage being wrought to its exterior by huge aliens smashing their way inside. Major Varnak saw there was no hope. This was the end.
By the way, type in the comment section below if you would like us to react to LFS's Tyranid invasion video. Now, that YouTube channel is, they made a 3-part video series that looks exactly like Brava Alpha Busa, if the Emperor had text-to-speech device. And I just gotta say, it was a great series from beginning to end, even though it took some time for that series to finish up. Now that it's done, it's a work of art. So if you would like us to react to it, type it in the comment section below, and we'll see if we can get to it as soon as possible. Oh, by the way, by the machine god, death, it's here.
The few remaining Imperial Guard in Skitarii would fight down to their very flesh and bone before the savage invaders would seethe and flow through the command bunker's corridors. Major Varnak would pray to his Omnissiah before sending a data codex deep into the lowest levels, specially constructed as a kind of black box for the outpost. This data would be their legacy to the Imperium of Man, its records providing essential information for the Imperium and humanity.
May the Omnissiah protect.
As Kripman approached the now dead, sterile world, he discovered that it had been ravaged of all life, even its oceans and atmosphere. Searching for the standard Imperial data codex that is secured in such a catastrophic destruction of an Imperial outpost, what he found was more disturbing than he could.
But I will demand for my Space Marines to know how to make a recap all the time. Plus, Tyran has not sent me my glasses. I have to wear these accursed sunglasses. Okay, that was a terrible impression, but there you go. But hey, Kripman wants his glasses. He didn't want sunglasses. So there you go. I mean, He had every right to go to Tyranid and ask, like, hey, where are my glasses?
Could have imagined. And seeing the videos and accumulated data of the Xenos assault, Kryptman would immediately leave the planet to communicate and convey the severity and imminent danger posed by this new and horrific alien threat. A horror he would subsequently name Tyranids. The planet of Tyran would hold the morbid honor of now becoming
The big space monsters of death.
their official designation. Inquisitor Kryptman attempted to use his astropath on board to project a vision of his discovery to the Imperium's network, only to discover that this was not possible. Something was preventing the astropath from communicating. This, of course, was the psychic disturbance caused by the Hive fleet. So he instead proceeded to the next nearest Imperial planet of Thandros in the hopes of establishing communication, only to discover this world had also been ravaged and was now a sterile, dead planet.
Ugh.
As is often the case with planets in the Imperium, sometimes entire worlds are lost without anybody even realizing it until years later. Eventually,
Think about it, the Imperium has to deal with that, all the time. Like, hey, whatever happened to Planet Bob? Does Planet Bob still exist? Hey, why don't you knock on the door and see if they're still around? Oh my God, there are so many dead bodies here. Oh well, just another Wednesday in the Administratum.
after successfully establishing communications, he was ordered to proceed to the planet of Macragge, the Space Marine chapter homeworld of the Ultramarines. The alien fleet would be designated
Long live the realm of Ultramar.
Behemoth. Thanks largely to the information gathered from the Tyran data codex, the Astartes and Imperial forces on Macragge were now able to formulate a plan in its defense.
Good.
Chapter Master Marneus Calgar quickly ordered its already immense, powerful defences strengthened. In addition to the existing Imperial ships in orbit, more arrived daily, including massive strike cruisers and Ultramarines battle barges. One thing
So just, maybe hide the fleet, somewhere in space. All right, that's the Texas speech device that's referencing in there. But maybe ambush said Tyranid hive mind.
was for sure the Tyranid threat would have a far more challenging battle to be fought here than at Tyran and Thandros. It would not be until a month later that the Tyranids would finally begin to assault Macragge. Over 1,000 of the Xenos ships had been present entering the system and had now already ravaged the garden world of Prandium, a former lush paradise, a garden world.
By the way, for those who don't know, Prandium is a word for breakfast.
A glory.
Or I think brunch or it's something like that. To anyone who knows Latin very well, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I just found that world's name to be interesting. That's all. And hey, add this to the Wikipedia fact. My favorite meal of the day is actually breakfast. Nothing like having some bacon, toast, ham, fruit, some scrambled eggs, some coffee, and orange juice. Good way to get your morning going.
To behold, and now a broken wasteland of death. Even with Kryptman's warnings, the first-hand accounts of the previously lush planet being turned to dead rock, Calgar was taken aback by the devastation of the Jewel of Ultramar. In Calgar's preparations, he would form 3 massive armies on the surface of Macragge, and as the first spores would begin to fall, the powerful Astartes regiments would begin their stand against the alien horrors. Calgar himself had formed the largest of these 3 armies and would carry out repeated rearguard assaults to wither and crush the Tyranid swarms.
Marneus Calgar!
The weight and force of the Tyranids could not be suppressed, even with the power of the Ultramarines on their home planet. On the planet's surface, Titans stalked the land, obliterating any alien swarms in their path. The ferocity of the Tyranid assault was something never.
I would love to see this series animated. Now, I know that Games Workshop kind of put a halt to a lot of dedicated Warhammer 40k fans from animating original content. That's why we no longer have any Texas speech device anymore. Games Workshop. bunch of punks. Anyways. But I would love to see this series done properly. Like, if, again, I know that Henry Cavill's doing a potentially live action Warhammer 40K content, films possibly, but the Siege of Macragge, that would be something. Like, the build up to it, not only was the Siege of Macragge itself, but maybe the worlds beforehand as building up to it. The first and second seasons are the Tyranids just running unchecked, and maybe season 3 is that big fight in the realm of Ultramar, and just throwing it out there. I don't know.
Seen before by the Astartes, and some even saw the colossal titans be dragged down to the ground before being brutally torn to pieces by the blurred forms of Claw and Chitin. First Company veteran Ultramarines would lay waste to these foul Xenos horrors, but deep inside their bunkers, holding...
And say what you will about the Ultramarines, right? They're facing off against superior, forces. They are outnumbered drastically. I think the way they held themselves out here is admirable, and defending their world. Well done, boys in blue. Well done.
Every piece of ground until it could no longer be held, but slowly retreating inside their fortress. The attacking Tyranids would be relentlessly slaughtered like an ocean of alien bodies, exploding, disintegrating and being vaporized by the unwavering but slowly withdrawing Astartes. As the fighting became ever more brutal and desperate, with much of Calgar's defense forces now slaughtered, one of the final battles would be fought on a location known as Cold Steel Ridge. The previously masterful rearguard army of Calgar here would find their match, as the Hive Mind had learned and adapted to his battle tactics. To compound the situation, the Tyranids would deploy a bioform later classified by the Imperium as a Swarm Lord. This massive creature was one of the final forms to lead assaults on Tyran and Thandros. Using the power of the Hive Mind, the Tyranids' previously mindless, animalistic, furious assaults now became viciously focused, even tactical. Over the remaining hours, the Swarm Lord would launch attacks again and again, killing scores of auxiliary troops in the most savage and horrific ways imaginable, no doubt in an attempt to
They're pretending they're dead. It is really unhonorable.
Horrify and break the human enemy. Torn apart, flayed, penetrated, dissolved, eaten alive, inside or out, the carnage continued on and on until the powerful Astartes began to appear outmatched by this previously mindless horror. Sensing victory, the Swarm Lord along with Tyranid warriors thrust into the fight and engaged Calgar himself. As the Ultramarines circled to aid the Chapter Master, Tyranids lying dead sprung to life, evidently feigning death in a suppressed state by the Swarm Lord so as to launch unexpected attacks on the now compromised Ultramarine defenders.
Don't forget the venerable Baneblade.
Calgar would be torn and savagely injured by this assault, and the remaining forces were forced into retreating to the battle barge Octavius. One of, if not the strongest defences of Macragge was its polar fortresses and massive ground weapons that fired high into orbit, obliterating the Xenos raining down onto the planet. The Tyranids, now being highly aware of this concentration of firepower, proceeded to rain down thousands more spores in this polar area, and Tyranids would now begin to appear in even greater numbers, and the fortresses were soon seething with alien horrors. With few options available, Calgar had to trust his planet-side Astartes would handle the tidal wave of Xenos now engulfing their bunkers. So Calgar would instead turn his attention to the Hive fleet, determined that if Macragge must fall, no other planet would. Despite the Imperial fleet and the remaining planetary defences engaging...
And don't forget, that and how could we ever forget the actions of Cato Sicarius, who saved the Chapter Master and became the new hero of the realm of Ultramar. I'm surprised. I am surprised that I, Cato Sicarius, am no longer being referenced into this glorious battle of the Ultramarines, but I, Cato Sicarius, am very, very humble and know that I, Cato Sicarius, was one of the key foundations in preserving our Chapter Master.
The orbiting bioships and destroying hundreds of them en masse. Many more remained, and wave after wave would assault the ships in space and the surface of the planet. By the time the Tyranids were deploying their 12th wave of attacks, the orbital defences of Macragge were now essentially annihilated, and so the Tyranids would even further intensify their attacks. Calgar would attempt to seize on this by assaulting their ships in orbit. The Tyranids were spread out in their attempts to envelop the planet, and then they would start to now withdraw their bioships, pull the engaging Imperial space vessels away from Macragge so as to be unable to assist the forces on the ground, especially around its polar bunkers and outposts. What the Tyranids could not have foreseen, though, was the arrival of the reinforcing battle fleet Tempestus, catching them now in between two Imperial fleets. But even so, the Tyranid Hive fleet was far from outmatched, and like
I do find this questionable. Like, you have these starships, and, you knew that they were coming. Wasn't there a way, you could kind of maybe sort of ambush them in space? Not to be arrogant like the Emperor from Texas Speech Device, but okay, for those of you who have read the battle more thoroughly than yours truly, was there anything in your mind? Let's get this conversation going. Was there anything in your mind that you would have done differently were you on the ground? Mind you, of course, the Imperium never dealt with the Tyranids before, but if you were in command of the forces on the ground there or in space, what would you have done differently in the battle for Ultramar, or Macragge to be more precise? Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and let's get this conversation going.
both fleets could have been potentially destroyed were it not for the supreme sacrifice of the mammoth Emperor-class battleship Dominus Astra. It would plough straight into the heart of the Hive fleet and sacrifice itself by detonating its warp drives, subsequently creating a warp vortex and dragging itself and the entire Tyranid fleet into total oblivion. Calgar's remaining forces round.
Many of the people who were on that ship died horrifically. They are with the Emperor now, and forever. May he forever protect their souls.
To return to Macragge and save the few, if any, Astartes forces that had managed to hold out in overwhelmed polar fortresses. Contact with the First Company veterans had now long been lost as the Tyranids overran the polar outpost, and Calgar, concerned by this, deployed the 3rd and 7th Companies by drop pod to the polar regions. As the Marines burst from their pod deployments, the scenes that met them were beyond belief. Hundreds of thousands of shredded and compounded Tyranid bodies lay piled as far as could be seen, and huge craters existed where plasma weapons and Titan reactors had gone critical, pocketing the surface of the land. Linking up quickly with any surface survivors, they pushed down into the depths of the outposts, clearing
right on.
the Xenos they encountered.
Well done, Ultramarines. Well done.
The 3rd Company, though, on landing was far less successful and came under heavy attack as soon as they made planetfall. Many hundreds of Tyranids sprang from the dark outpost entrances to engage them, but heavy fire from the Marines and Thunderhawk gunships overhead crushed them and drove them back into the darkness of the reinforced outposts. On entering the darkened corridors of the outpost as the 7th Company had done, the 3rd began to notice how walls and structural elements were dripping with mucus, and it seemed that in many places solid material appeared to be breaking down. They would lay down heavy flame units through the corridors to clear their advances.
Brother, get the flamer. The heavy flamer.
Slowly progressing deeper into the bunkers. As the 3rd Company continued to burn their way into the darkness, every step crushing alien chitin and acidic blood splashing everywhere, they slowly entered the deepest areas of the bunkered outposts in the polar region. And it was here that they would finally find the last remaining 1st Company veterans. A single circle of Space Marines in Terminator armor laying slumped back to back, having been savagely ended by the Xenos horrors. There were no First Company Ultramarines remaining. They had been killed to the last man.
They're with the Emperor now.
After the nightmare that was the battle for their chapter world, they faced the huge task of rebuilding their chapter, notably the veteran First Company, which had been so brutally obliterated. This task would be bequeathed to Chaplain Cassius, who would request to Calgar that the new First Company veterans be drawn from the ranks of those who had survived the tyrannic assault, as only they could understand this threat and the consequences of a tyrannic war. These elite veterans make up the now reformed First Company of the Ultramarines. The battle for Macragge is a bittersweet victory for the Ultramarines, having been successful against such a horrific enemy, but also suffering such devastating losses. The names of their fallen brothers are commemorated each year, and their sacrifices remembered throughout the Ultramar system.
I also want to add on here too, it takes a while to train up and build a Space Marine. So the Ultramarines were out of the game for a little while just to rebuild up their chapter. And, I'm willing to bet too, because their core capital world was under siege, that the Ultramarines, as well as their attached forces, were doing everything they could to systematically look over every single nook, cranny, cave, cavern, to make sure that there were no more Tyranids or Gene Stealers left on the planet, because that again, they must have been very thorough to ensure that would never happen again.
And so the Tyranids would not be seen for over 200 years, until without warning in 993 of Millennium 41, a new invasion fleet would appear. Hive Fleet Kraken, which would now engage with simultaneous attacks on planets throughout the system. Eventually this assault would also be repelled, but the Tyranids would again be detected by Inquisitor Kryptman in 997 of Millennium 41, only 4 years later. Kryptman was able, by burning out Astropaths, to discern this new fleet Leviathan's intended course of attack through its targeted system. But despite some initial defensive successes, Kryptman would order the act of exterminatus on the world of Cordelis, the next planet in the Tyranids' path, so as to reduce their ability to increase their biomass. Despite Imperial Navy objections, Kryptman would succeed in carrying out his exterminatus to the planet and its population with virus bombs. This catastrophic level of civilian deaths and his lies to the Ultramarines would enrage them and other Imperial forces. Worse would be to come though when Kryptman would order the single largest self-inflicted atrocity in Imperial history, when he would order a system-wide scorched earth tactic by using exterminatus on every planet within the reach of Hive Fleet Leviathan, so as to effectively starve them of biomatter. He would later, due to these actions, be denounced as a traitor to the Imperium and Carta Externis by his fellow Inquisitors.
Alright, let's talk about Kryptman. And I want to hear your opinions. Is Kryptman a savior of the Imperium? Is he a traitor and a genocidal madman, and that there was a different way in which the Imperium could have handled that Hive fleet? Or is there a middle ground? Let's respect each other's opinions. Let's share our thoughts. After all, this is Warhammer 40k content. It's not the end of the world, but let's share our opinions. Let's be respectful to each other. Do you think Kryptman was justified? Is he a traitor and a madman? Or do you see what he was trying to do? And in many ways, for me, this is my perspective, and this is how I know it wouldn't last in the realm of 40k, there had to have been a different way. There were many loyal citizens and resources that are now forever lost. Now, obviously, the Tyranids are an unknown enemy force. We don't know, and that's the thing I like about the Tyranids. Unlike the aliens from Alien or the Zerg, or the Borg, we don't really know the exact number of Tyranids, and the thing is, the whole hive mind out there is coming from outside the galaxy. StarCraft did the dumb idea of, making the Zerg our friend. Yes, I saw Wings. I played Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm, and Legacy of the Void, and It's like they neutered the Zerg in that game. But anyways, that's my opinion of it. And then the aliens, those are just face-hugging creatures. And then there's the Borg, which, I don't know, Star Trek, whatever. But the Tyranids, though, we don't know what they're fully capable of. They are still an unknown. And that's what really gets me interested in them. And plus, let's actually talk about the Tyranids and the Borg and the Zerg and the aliens from Alien. If there was a four-way fight between the Borg, the Zerg, the aliens from Alien, or the Tyranids, who would win? Type your thoughts and reasonings why. I want to hear you. I want to hear you speak and explain your reason why either the Borg would win, the Tyranids would win, the aliens would win, or the Zerg would win. I'm very curious to see what's going to be written in the comment section below. Give us your feedback.
But Crickman still held loyal allies within the Astartes' Death Watch, and the final fate of High Fleet Leviathan,
Death Watch, that made him plenty of recap,
was far from over. The Tyranids and their ongoing tyrannic wars would change the Imperium forever, but there are many who believe that their invasions of the galaxy have only just begun. Further examination of Imperial records after the tyrannic wars had begun revealed disturbing facts. Facts that suggest the Tyranids had been around for a much longer period of time, and that predatory creatures like the Katashan Devil and Fenrisian Kraken are actually ancient descendants of Tyranid hive fleets, perhaps long since abandoned or forgotten by the Hive. Records of the Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition have suggested Tyranid contact as far back as Millennium 35. Bioships of Tyranid configuration were also discovered on an ice planet after Imperial Guard was sent to deal with an orc threat there. Tyranids would burst out attacking the guardsmen sent, but they could not understand how this was possible, as no Tyranid ships were in orbit of the planet. Eventually they realized that as long ago as 7,000 years, a full Tyranid hive ship had crashed into the planet and remained dormant ever since. The prospect of it reanimating and sending out psychic distress calls is something that they could not allow to happen. Eventually the Imperial forces are able to destroy the hive ship by enabling massive volcanic eruptions which consume and destroy the trapped ship and all its horrific inhabitants. But these events suggested that the Tyranids had been present even earlier than Millennium 45, perhaps anything longer than even 1,000 years prior, and it also penetrated further into Imperial space than was previously thought. The prospect of other deliberately hidden or preemptively placed hive ships was a greatly concerning realization. But it's also possible that these earlier fleets were defeated and repelled by another race like the Eldar. The Tyranids are one of the most severe threats to not just the Imperium, but the entire galaxy. And even though they have wrought terrible destruction through the first fleets that have appeared, a much worse possibility exists, that so far the Tyranid hive fleets are just initial tendrils.
Exactly.
Scouting parties of a much larger and exponentially more dangerous main fleet, as yet unseen, still travelling through the void toward the Milky Way galaxy.
We cannot live through this. Mankind cannot live through this. In a single day, they have covered the surface of this planet with a flood of living blades and needle-fanged mouths. Death! By the machine god, death has come! Kill one, and 10 take its place. If they are truly without number, then our race is doomed to a violent death. before every shred of our civilization is scourged away by a force more voracious than the fires of hell. Death by the machine god. Death is here. All right, there's a lot to talk about and discuss. So first of all, shout out to Luetin09 who made a fantastic video on the siege and battle of Macragge against the Ultramarines defending their home world, their capital world of Ultramar, against the voracious and evil and vile Tyranid hive mind. What are your thoughts on the tactics? Was there anything that could have been done to lessen the pain and suffering that the humans of the Imperium had to go through? Would you have done that battle differently? How would you have constructed or orchestrated the defense of Ultramar and the capital world of Macragge? And also, hey, let's get this conversation going further. What are your thoughts on the fact that we could be possibly facing scout fleets of the Tyranid hive mind? I mean, that's pretty nightmarish. Like, everything that the Imperium, the Orcs, the Necrons, even the forces of Chaos, the Tau, the Dark Eldar, everything that they face so far, if they fought against the Tyranids, has nothing but been a scout fleet. It's not the main force of the Tyranid hive mind. And then finally, who would win in a four-way head fight? The aliens from Alien, the Borg from Star Trek, the Zerg from StarCraft, or the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k? I'm interested in hearing you share your thoughts and opinions. Please, let's all respect each other's opinions, but I'm interested in hearing what you think, and please share them. Plus, also, Chicago Reacts does have a Discord channel. Also, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that ring bell notification. That way you're made aware when we upload new content onto our channel. And then finally, please support the original content creators because it's the right thing to do. So without further ado, my name's Kit. Take good care of yourselves, folks. And remember, the Tyranids, if they bleed, they can die. Humanity first, 100%. The Emperor protects.